Hi, Chaplain Steve with two stories, and I told you sometime in the beginning that sometime back in some of the videos in the early part when I started doing videos, the chaplains get together. We talk by phone. Sometimes we meet each other and we tell our stories. We tell about circumstances we get into, being in the hospital, so on and so forth. Sometimes things dealing with ethics, and so. But we got pretty good conversation, and there was some story that we're told. We kind of exchange stories from patients, whatever, and two of them that I found pretty interesting and kind of unique too. They're just interesting, and the first one really is dealing with a father and son. And the father was telling, he was deeply affected by what happened, but the way the father explained to his son that he got a call from heaven. And to make a long story short, his friend, he had a very close friend. They're almost like really just real good buddies. Passed away suddenly, and his name was Fred. And so, about after from what I understand, a couple of months later, he got a phone call from the operator, and a person-to-person call from Fred. And the father was explaining to him, person-to-person call from Fred, because Fred had passed away, a couple of months before. I mean, somebody's playing some really kind of a joke. Maybe this is, and during that time, candid camera was really big in those days. But he said maybe this is camera doing something, and they don't realize that he passed away. But the operator on the other line on the other side said, it's a person-to-person call from Fred. And they're explaining about his father that it was a very surprised look, and he said, this can't be. There's just, there's no way. And then the operator kept insisting, yeah, it's a person-to-person call from Fred. So he says, okay, and he doesn't really kind of know. So he takes the phone closer to his ear, and he hears the voice in his Fred's voice. And what Fred tells him is that, he's letting him know that he's doing just fine. And that this life that he's in now is that he finds himself more human than he's ever been before. And he said it's wonderful. But he just wanted to tell his friend, that he's doing just fine. The father, the way the story was told, the son was telling the story about his father, but the father was deeply affected by this. This was an actual call from heaven. And the father was not really religious. He did believe in God, but he was not a religious man, and this altered his life. And hearing his voice over the phone, a person-to-person call. I mean, it is kind of unique to find that out as a person-to-person call. But anyway, that's the first story. The second story is that we get more often than not. We get people that come in the hospital that are really pretty sick. I mean, real sick. And I won't get into a lot of detail. I'll leave that alone a little bit. But in this particular case, the patient came in and she was in pretty bad shape. And she was getting tested and getting, from MRIs to X-rays, and every time, they're coming back with results, they were not good. And she was getting very depressed. She didn't know what was going to happen to her, and as the story goes, she was getting deeply depressed and became very suicidal. She wanted to die. About 2 or 3 days later in the hospital, as explained to me, she heard a voice. The patient heard a voice, and it was an elderly woman. The patient's looking around, and maybe it's coming from the intercom or coming from the phone or just looking around trying to find out where the voice is. But the voice was just kind of like right in front of her. Elderly woman. And the elderly woman says to her, can I sit next to you and talk to you for a minute? I need to have a talk with you. And so the patient was kind of looking back, trying to wonder, what is the story on this? And said, okay, but she couldn't see who it was. Suddenly, she sees who it is. It's an elderly woman who is supposedly dressed in white. And sure enough, the patient's in the bed there, and this elderly woman sits right next to her. And the elderly woman tells her, I'm a messenger from God, and he wanted me to tell you that even though you're very suicidal, what is really important is to live your life, to live it all the way through. And the news is that you're in darkness right now. And you're going to have to get through this darkness step by step, one day at a time. There's a lesson to be learned, and that's what God wants you to learn, is this lesson. But the older woman assured her that you are going to get well, you're going to be just fine. Sure enough, after that exchange, and sure enough, when the elderly woman left, she really started feeling a lot better, and it was a lot better, and amazed a lot of doctors kind of all of a sudden she was, none of the symptoms she had, none of the, whatever was going on with her, it was like kind of disappeared. It happens in the hospital. Every once in a while we get circumstances that, just, if you want to call it a miracle, whatever it may be, cannot be explained. And, sometimes, between chaplains and doctors, there are some doctors who recognize the value of the spiritual. That not only the physical part of getting better, but also the spiritual need, and so we were talking about that too. But I found the two stories really pretty interesting, and there are more stories to tell you. And as I said, we get together, we talk about things, and I just wanted to share these two stories with you that I thought were kind of unique. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end it here, and then there's going to be more stories coming in the next video. But I wanted just to do these two. And then there'll be another video coming really shortly. But anyway, as always, I hope your day is going well. Again, I want to thank you very much for watching the videos. And until the next video, I'll see you then. Bye.